Chapter 4. What is imposter syndrome? Who knows what imposter syndrome is? And it sounds like a facetious question, but imposter syndrome is so common that we instinctively know what it is. 70% of us are said to suffer at some point. Interestingly, I've only found one colleague I discussed this with who wasn't a sufferer. That's a long way short of the 30% you'd expect. Almost every medical condition is recorded in the International Classification of Diseases, or ICD, now in its 11th iteration. In addition, there's a psychiatric version called the DCM, or Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, currently in its 5th iteration. You can find anything, or at least so you'd think. The most bizarre code is famously V97.33XD, patient sucked into a jet engine, subsequent encounter. So you'd expect to find imposter syndrome right up there. Burnout too. Nope, neither of them, not a word. Some entries in these directories affect just 9 people worldwide. 9 people. Imposter syndrome, which can affect 70% of us at any given time, is nowhere to be found. Tumbleweed. It's clear, though, that you're not suffering alone. Others hide it just as well as you do. Is that because it's so hard to define? Not really. Most of us think we know what it is. So why is it not there? Something so common might be considered normal, however damaging it is. In light of this, it has also been described as a phenomenon. While I have heard and used both to connect with different audiences, I prefer syndrome. That better conveys the widespread pain it causes. A phenomenon to me feels more fleeting and trivial. I have seen the imposter phenomenon described as a fear of success and a feeling that sufferers don't deserve success. And that can be part of imposter syndrome, but it's by no means all of it. But whether it is a syndrome or a phenomenon, it hasn't yet received adequate recognition and resources. Why not? If suppose the most successful and accomplished among us suffer, it can only be because of a lack of treatment options, a lack of knowledge of these, or that someone or the system stands to benefit from people continuing to suffer. Indeed, some systems might choose to delay sharing or providing successful treatments. Skeptical me? Certainly. The chapters at the end of the book look into why healthcare systems might want to maintain the status quo. It probably isn't a spoiler alert that it helps to manage bright, motivated, resilient people who could be challenging. Medics are my tribe I first envisioned this book for. More recently, I've learned how much other professions, entrepreneurs, authors and creatives also suffer, and I hope that they also find this book helpful. What is not imposter syndrome? When we put ourselves forward, or someone else does, to a situation beyond anything we've tackled before, most of us would be nervous, potentially excited, but nervous. Those feelings may be even more intense if we find ourselves among recognised experts or those with experience and results. And remember, all experts were new once. This is natural nerves. We'd all expect to feel nervous in these situations. Solution-focused coaching can help us approach new things as our best selves, knowing what we want to achieve. But that's one for another book. So why do we say we have imposter syndrome? First, it highlights the difference between us and others who've already succeeded. It builds a buffer in case we don't perform or it doesn't work out. Saying we have imposter syndrome shows we're trying to punch above our weight, and it's a positive thing. Saying we have natural nerves might make us seem weak. Natural nerves are precisely that, they're natural. It's a shame that sharing these emotions isn't more accepted socially. So, what is imposter syndrome? Imposter syndrome is something the sufferer feels, yet is so rarely seen by those around them. While everything on the surface appears to be going well, the sufferer believes that they're not worthy of their success and are winging it. They feel that as soon as they make any mistake, they'll suddenly be unmasked as a fraud, and to have been a fraud all along. Sufferers live their professional and personal lives doing everything they can to make sure the protective wall they built themselves has no chinks in it at all, and that they feel as protected as they can be. What do you think if someone at work says they suffer from this? Are they being modest? Are they looking for compliments? Of course, they don't believe that. They're just saying that not to sound big-headed. This has not been my experience of talking to colleagues at all. Those who seem the most successful, compassionate and energetic often present a front. I should probably say that again. It's often those at the very top of the game that underneath it all are suffering the most, invisible to all those around them. They make it look like it's effortless every day. Others instinctively look up to them, but many of them experience imposter syndrome intensely. Root causes. We all go through training with high expectations, and parents might have had expectations before that. There are constant risks. Other staff or patients can often be critical or hurtful. None of us is perfect. Deep down, we know this, yet we still seem to think that we should come over as perfect. But things won't always go perfectly. We know what advice we give colleagues and friends. We're only human, everyone makes mistakes, so don't worry, and be kind to yourself. Yet we hold ourselves to a much higher standard and can't even see it. In medicine, we take information and weigh it up against many potential diagnoses, and we then choose the most likely. We weigh all the information we can gather, including the story, examination, and investigation results. Picking the most likely every time means we always take a degree of risk. The least risk we can, but a risk nonetheless. No one can beat the house every time, so inevitably we're all wrong sometimes. Sometimes a critical element hasn't appeared yet, or the illness is still developing. Sometimes the patient or doctor misread a crucial piece of information. Nobody can be right all the time. That includes me, that includes you, and that includes everyone around us. Other professions experience similar issues. I'm sure lawyers have clients who never knew a piece of information was critical. They may have clients who deliberately withhold information or give false information, and sometimes the police miss things. Entrepreneurs may not know someone else is developing the same thing in their garage. They may not realise that their perfect mentor was a friend of a friend. A successful funder or entrepreneur can unfairly dismiss an entrepreneur. Family or friends may scoff at their ambitions. No matter how diligent or dogged they are, there are always vast elements of luck. We can put enormous burdens on ourselves, whatever situation we're in. It's all very well saying, be kind to yourself, but that isn't easy if you have an inner voice that says you're not good enough, because you've been challenged and embarrassed for years. For doctors particularly, we're continually being reminded to be kind. The GMC, or General Medical Council, the regulator of doctors in the UK, incorporated kindness to patients and colleagues into its good medical principles on which doctors are held accountable. The GMC stance really irritates doctors, who can be treated unkindly by others in the system. Story after story of the opposite is emerging on social media daily. Others working in the system don't have such a stipulation from their regulators, and this will likely be another tool for baiting doctors. It won't feel fair and could be used unfairly. Similar situations will occur in other professions. We have to lead teams and seamlessly integrate into multidisciplinary teams. What is even being asked of us? In the UK, we have 360-degree routine surveys of colleagues and patients on our work. I'm sure something very similar exists in other countries and professions. Those who suffer from imposter syndrome often score highly, especially with patients. In the self-rating section, we often score ourselves much lower. We don't believe we're good enough. Specialty and national averages for these scores are just below 5 out of 5. Anything less than perfect is deemed poor and needs reflection. So how does that work? We're nearly all perfect, but not quite. What happened to being average, or even being good? The average is around 4.8 to 4.9 out of 5, and that makes no sense. It adds to that feeling of inadequacy and focuses on faults and failings. One negative rater's comment can be really upsetting, and because it's anonymous, we don't even know where it came from, so we suspect everyone. This process helps maintain our imposter syndrome. Imposter feelings will still be there until we address the causes or look beyond the symptoms. Let's not focus on where we are, but on where we want to be and what we need to heal to get there.